It's common knowledge by now that RWBY has a lot of characters, arguably too many characters, and this is a topic I've thought a lot about, but never really knew how exactly I wanted to approach it, and I might try touching on this topic again in the future, but for now, I decided rather than try to talk about the number of RWBY's characters as a whole, I'd start by narrowing things down to try to exemplify something I really want to say, and to do that, let's talk about Oscar. Now, before I get into it, I would like to first say that I do like Oscar as a character. He's sweet and nice, but in all honesty, if we really think about it, Oscar is completely pointless as a character. There really is no reason for him to exist at all. Now, let me try to explain myself. Oscar was first introduced in Volume 4. Okay, now hit pause because this is our first big red flag. Volume 4? We've already spent the first 3 years of the show's runtime establishing these characters, getting attached to and developing these characters. Hell, not even all of them had really gotten much screen time or development yet by the start of Volume 4. Now suddenly they're just throwing this unknown farm kid at us and we're supposed to just start developing him now too? Now, I know there are plenty of shows that introduce important characters later on into its series. In Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, the Chimeras, 4 of the most entertaining and important characters didn't get introduced until its 4th or 5th season. So it's not terrible that Oscar got introduced late in the game. Hell, lots of other really important characters only got introduced in Volume 4 too. But the thing is, despite being immediately presented as an integral character, they also refused to give him, like, an actual character, though. Like, he's a little farm boy, and that's it. Like, literally, I'm not kidding, that's it. Before I started this little paragraph, I said I like Oscar as a character, and yeah, I do. But it's hard to dislike a character who has the depth of a plastic spoon. There's no character to dislike. He's just generally kind. And it's weird because there's definitely something they could have worked with in order to give him an actual backstory. He lives with his aunt, who they give so little of a shit about she never even appears on screen. But why? Why does he live with his aunt? What happened to his mother and father? Were they huntsmen? Are they even alive or dead or what? Oscar literally never talks about his home life. Apparently he didn't give a shit about that aunt of his either because he doesn't ever talk about her. Wonder how she's doing. You know, we saw that montage of friends and families of our heroes during Ruby's little speech in Volume 8, but Oscar just gets omitted, and the thing is, he's the next Ozpin. A major key aspect to his character and development is the fact he's worried about his fusion with Ozpin.
Every time we use it, I can feel us merging faster. I'm not ready for that.
The problem is, Oscar has virtually no character to be lost. I'm really not that worried or anything if he fuses with Ozpin because, at least from what we've seen, there isn't anything Oscar would potentially be losing. If Oscar loses his consciousness to Ozpin, what changes? Will he miss his aunt? Apparently not. What about his mom and dad? If they're alive, would they care about their sons' thoughts being taken over by a parasitic wizard brain? Ruby's sentences out of context just are fucking... The interesting development of Oscar's main conflict would be vastly more interesting if there were loved ones who didn't want to lose his consciousness to Ozpin's. And it's not just his lack of family that's dampening Oscar's character development. Oscar also never portrays his basic desires or goals. Did he want to be a huntsman? Was he just completely content with being a farmer? Again, he doesn't ever discuss this. He just sort of assimilates himself into the heroes' team and starts training. Whether or not this was something he wanted is never considered or discussed. So not only was Oscar introduced late in the game compared to the other heroes, but he was also not given any real character, nothing to really define him, and unfortunately he is yet to actually ever get any. In Volume 4, Oscar's main screen time is mostly spent coming to terms with the fact that he's not crazy, and that he does need to help Ozpin with his mission. Oscar bumps into Team Ranger, and here we go! So he didn't get any characterization with his aunt or about the farm. Fine, whatever. Well, now we can start developing his relationship with the other heroes. Except They don't. Instead, every Oscar scene gets overrun with exposition. Either Ozpin takes over and blabbers on about exposition stuff, or if Oscar can actually participate in the scene, it's just the other characters blabbering on about exposition stuff. Which is another downside to having him getting introduced in Volume 4, is that most of their exposition is stuff we, the audience, already knows. And the befuddling thing is, there are definitely moments where Oscar could totally get to interact and develop with the characters, but for some fucking reason, Oscar is always omitted from those scenes. Volume 5, the kids reunite and have a big fun time eating dinner, but not Oscar. He doesn't get to meet Weiss and Yang, he just isn't in the room at all. Volume 6, Oscar gets in a fight with Jean, but we skip over his development from that fight. We only see Jean's mindset over it, and how Jean came to terms with it. Oscar just did it off screen. Volume 7, the kids get their huntsman licenses and sit around partying and eating cake and having fun, but not Oscar. Again, Oscar continually either gets overrun by exposition or just isn't in the scene, to the point where he doesn't even actually have any relationships with the others.
I can't do it.
John's like you!
An intriguing concept. I would love to see Jean, the former noob of the party, fill the role of a mentor, essentially mimicking his friendship with Pyrrha, but now developing with Oscar. Unfortunately, after this scene, Oscar and Jean don't interact one-on-one anymore. There's a running gag of Nora being an aggressive hugger, which actually got a very cute reference in the beginning of Volume 8, but that hugging is the only thing that hints at a deeper friendship between Oscar and Nora. They haven't had any interesting conversations with each other. Worst of all, the hugging is entirely one-sided. It mostly speaks on how Nora likes Oscar. It tells us nothing about how Oscar actually feels about Nora. And with these two examples, it's at least a tiny glimpse of a real friendship. When it comes to Ren, Yang, Weiss, and Blake, I don't think Oscar has literally ever had any meaningful interactions with them. Literally, all I can think of is accidentally eating Yang's hair and...
If we're all so tired, maybe we should make breakfast?
You wanna make it?
Not really.
Like, I'm not kidding. That's it. Every time Oscar talks to these characters, he's just churning out exposition. They aren't growing a bond, they're just explaining some lore thing, or some plot thing, or Ren is just using his stupid semblance upgrade to skip over the interesting character development Oscar wants to give. Every other time the characters have expressed their personal feelings or addressed a personal conflict, it was Ozpin who was in control. Oscar never gets to share these moments with the others, which is incredibly befuddling because the kids do regularly have conflicts with Ozpin's inclusion. So you would think this would lead to natural conflicts with Oscar too. He's literally inside Oscar's head. You would think anything that has to do with Ozpin would also translate to Oscar, but no. Ozpin lied, so we're mad, and we punched him. But then they never addressed how they also punched Oscar, how they feel about Oscar in general, and Oscar also doesn't get to bring up his thoughts on Ozpin's lies, or the fact that he got punched. By all means, the only characters he actually has any real bond with is Ruby and Ironwood. It's easy for him to actually seem like friends with Ruby or Ironwood, because they're literally the only characters he's ever had one-on-one conversations with, or real conversations in general. But even then, those conversations once again get bogged down with exposition, and everything beyond that, it only ever services the development of the other character, not Oscar. Oscar and Ruby talk about what keeps them going. Well, Oscar asks the question, and Ruby monologues a lot about how she misses her dead friends, and then just walks away. Oscar never gets to bounce off of Ruby's words, he doesn't get to express his own thoughts on their journey, he's just stuck in the background putting on a backpack. Oscar and Ironwood talking about the relics. Well, Oscar asks a question, and Ironwood goes into his monologue about his dedication to Ozpin and how the events from the past has been haunting him, and then they leave the vault. Yeah, Oscar gives one brief answer, which is at least a little more than Ruby let him have, but it's short, and Ironwood doesn't even answer to that. Once again, Oscar is there, but he's not really there. Hell, even in the scene where his entire goal was turning Hazel and Emerald over to the good guys' side, Oscar is again in the background. It's again Oscar asking a question and Hazel monologuing about his character or his thoughts about Ozpin. The only time something has actually happened in relation to Oscar specifically as a character was his fight with Jean, but immediately after being confronted, they split. Jean ran off, Oscar vanished, and then they came back and everything was better. Oscar exposits the character development we missed to instead see Jean's development. This has been the first and last time there's been an actual point in regards to Oscar as a character. Not Ozpin's next vessel, not the person who happens to ask something to spark the other characters' monologue. Jean was explicitly upset with Oscar himself, and then we just skipped over it. Even more enraging is the fact that when Oscar is in a perfect spot to develop, not even with his own character, but in relation to Ozpin's old character threads, they don't even do that. The end of Volume 7, Oscar got shot by Ironwood. How intriguing. The dynamic between these three characters are now very interesting. Ironwood is still devoted to Ozpin, but he doesn't trust Oscar. That is cool. But the next time these two characters are face to face, they literally just skip over everything. There's a super short, very ugly fight, and then that's it. No thoughts, no reactions, no emotions, no final confrontations. Once again, Oscar gets pushed back, as instead, now, Ironwood is only focused on Winter. Oscar is forgotten again. Oh, Critter, you're harping an awful lot on the idea of Oscar's friendships and relationships with the other characters. Is that really that important? Yes! Because that's the most interesting part about being Ozpin's next life. Forgiving Oscar's absent home life or real family members, Oscar's life is the thing he's worried about. His friendships, his personality, his whole being is the core of his conflict in this whole story. If Ruby became his best friend ever, wouldn't she be worried she would lose her friend as he merged into Ozpin? Oscar's struggles, especially in Volume 8, is him admitting to Ozpin he's afraid of losing himself. The bonds with the people around him should be a huge driving factor to make us, the audience, agree with him. And I am completely confused that they made this whole new character to fill this role and have thus far refused to actually give him something to support this plot thread. From his absent aunt, to his non-existent friendships with the other heroes, to not even carrying out Ozpin's old plot threads. So, rewinding a bit. The point I made in the beginning was to touch on the fact Ruby's cast is arguably too big. The point of what I'm really trying to say here is, I think it would have benefited the story if Oscar never existed, and instead, I would have liked to see a pre-existing character become Ozpin's new host. And my first knee-jerk reaction to that thought was, well, I understand why it was some random boy we've never met. What are the odds that Ozpin's soul would have linked to someone we already know? But really, in the realm of storytelling, pretty dang likely. We tell stories because there are characters who drive those stories forward. Like, it's not a coincidence that Frodo happened to be the guy we were watching in the beginning of the story, and he just happens to be the one to get the ring to take to Mount Doom. No, we watched Frodo because he was the one who went on the adventure. It wasn't a coincidence, it was set up. That was the point of the story and the point of establishing that character first. It wouldn't be a, oh well, that is awfully convenient. What are the odds? No, instead, it would have been 3 years worth of prior establishment and development. We wouldn't have to stop everything to re-explain semblances or anything. The characters would have already established families and friendships and relationships with each other. It would be an interesting new conflict to be thrust upon a character we already knew. The obvious answer would be Jean. He already got more attention compared to the other characters. He had a similarly righteous mindset as Ozpin. Oz let him cheat his way into Beacon. Maybe that was the entire reason he did so. He knew Jean was gonna be his next life somehow. Oh, but no, we can't do that. The fans don't like Jean because he does do a lot of things instead of the other characters. They think he's a self-insert, so we can't give him the extra superpower. The fans will keep picking on Miles if we do. Alright, well what about Ren? He already has a green color palette. No, we can't do that. We haven't actually given him a character yet. And the idea of his relationship with Nora would be really awkward with Ozpin's inclusion. And even though that dynamic could actually be really interesting if handled well, we all know they wouldn't do that. Celtic Phoenix had an amazing idea for his Ruby rewrites and made it Roman Torchwick, which is so good. He's got green eyes, he's morally gray like they keep insisting Ozpin is. He already fights with a cane. Seriously, go watch Celtic Phoenix's rewrites, they are so good and I love them. His Volume 5 rewrites just came out and it's awesome, seriously. If the idea of Roman being Ozpin's next host interests you, check it out. It actually works really well. Oh, but the show can't do that because they killed off Roman instead. Gotta get rid of the actually entertaining characters to just give us the Bora Patrol. Well, what about Sun? Nope, can't be Sun because he's a Faunus. And for some reason in this show, the important Faunus characters are always only limited to the racism subplot. You know, I'm just saying, alright? Just saying. It's a thing I've noticed with the Faunus characters, you know? I'm just gonna say, there are no Faunus maidens yet. So, well damn, who else could it be? Cardin? That could be neat. Being forced to work together with your prior enemy. But after people made such a stink about the Jean arc from Volume 1, RT cut Cardin out of the show almost entirely. And honestly, he has just as much depth as Oscar. Just replace farm boy with schoolyard bully, and nothing is different. So what, Crow? Really, he has the best development establishment. He has friends and family who would be worried or sad if Crow lost his consciousness to Ozpin. So there's plenty of options. Honestly, with enough finagling, any of these options could have worked. But they decided to make a new character. And why? Honestly, why? Why make Oscar at all? Why did they decide to not only create a whole new character, but also make Oscar the type of person he is? Honestly, Oscar is just a fusion of Ruby and Jean. A character who's new to fighting and needs to learn to catch up with combat? Well, that was Jean, but now it's Oscar. A character who's overflowing with optimism and is a simple soul? Well, Ruby did have that character trait, but I guess Oscar needs to get some of that too. Oscar is just an attempt to recreate the aspects of Ruby and Jean that made them interesting main characters to begin with. But why? Well, I have a thought, and I hate to say this because I hope it's not true, but honestly, it's because they wanted a male character to be a main protagonist. Team Ruby are all girls. They're the important ones with their name in the title of the show and everything. And maidens can only be girls too. That's a really cool big superpower thing that drives the story forward. Oh, but what about the boys? Oh, maidens are cool women who inherit magical powers from their predecessors? Well, there's a boy who can get that kind of power too. Only their version is better, because Ozpin is super duper strong, and there's only one of him. One is more special than four. For the boys. Do I think this was actually their exact mentality? No, probably not. But I can't help but look at how Ozpin's reincarnation got set up right after the maiden thing got set up, and see all those similarities between them. It's just the really cool female-only superpower, but now there's a male-only version too. So instead, they opted to make a whole new character, but didn't take the effort to fully develop this new character's personality or motivations, even after 4, almost 5 years. Volume 9 is just around the corner. That will mean Oscar will be a main character in our cast for 5 whole years. By this point, with this much time that has passed, it shouldn't matter that they made a new character to be Ozpin's new host. He should have gotten plenty of characterization, plenty of time to discuss his home life on the farm, his motivations, his personal goals, plenty of time to become close friends with the rest of the cast, to be a good character who I don't want to lose to Ozpin's osmosis. But instead, all we've gotten is the male variant of maiden powers, layered on top of a character with as much depth as a harem anime protagonist. Well fuck, at least Skune actually talked to the girls he hung out with. That's more than Oscar ever does. The beginning of this video, I talked about the fact that Ruby has arguably too many characters, and Oscar here is a shining example of how this has happened. Rather than use any of the characters they already had established, they decided they wanted to do a soft reset of what the real protagonists will look like, and gave us Oscar instead. A bland beacon to satisfy the fans' various issues with our prior established heroes. We want a boy character to be important, but we don't want it to be Jean. Alright, here's this little farm boy then. We don't like Jean because he takes screen time away from Team Ruby. Alright, we've fixed that issue by giving Oscar nothing to do instead. We've overcorrected the problem so much that Oscar doesn't participate in any fight or conversation unless Ozpin is using his body to exposit to the team. The girls get a really cool superpower. Why can't a boy get a really cool superpower too? Alright, now we've made it so Ozpin can reincarnate into our new boy character so that the boys get something cool too. Hey, why do all the main characters have pale skin tones? Well, our little farm boy now has the slightest of tan skin, which compared to the ghost white complexion of most of the current cast is pretty dang different. Aren't you happy with this character? Oscar might as well be a walking band-aid for all he's done for the story. This is the point about too many characters in RWBY. Rather than choose to further develop any of the pre-existing male characters, all with established friendships and moralities, all who offer some sort of unique personal conflict if they were chosen to be Ozpin's next host, they decided to ignore all of that prior setup and make us a whole new character. You don't always need to make a new character for something. And if you are going to make a new character, you have to go the extra mile and actually give that character development. Otherwise, all you get left with is Oscar. Shout out to my $10 patrons, you're all amazing. Nako, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, G Extreme, Classy Critic, Trey Not Dre, Sunny Shy, Great Bar, Pentamenta, Jake, Storm, Amber, Lolith, Hype Man, Luno the Evoker, Zero to Hero, Keithan, Isaiah, Josh, Joseph, Scaring Crows, Blue Wiz, and Danny Boy. I hope you liked this video. I would love to talk more about characters in RWBY some more, and how I think there are too many of them, but rather than be broad about it, I like talk about specific characters. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. Any thoughts about this video, or Oscar, or Ozpin's next host, or any of the things I talked about, leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.